defied out of spite. He said that without his presence and personal inspection, no one was to touch the price tags. So we didn't touch them. At one time, I worked in a small store whose owner loved to put on showy performances by introducing a new rule every time someone made even the smallest mistake. One day, someone printed a shelf price tag with the wrong promotion date. It was nothing serious, could have been fixed in a couple of minutes. But instead of simply asking us to be more careful, he came in extremely displeased and announced that from that moment on, no one was allowed to change price tags, promo signs, or labels without his personal inspection and presence. He repeated this twice. He really enjoyed saying things like that. We all understood that this was nonsense. He's not even at the store for half the workday, and prices change constantly. Well, fine, it's his store, his rules. I immediately asked what we should do if a promotion ends while he's gone, but the old price tag is still up. He replied, "Leave it as it is. If I haven't personally checked it and I'm not there, don't touch anything." He said this with absolute confidence and without any doubt. So that's what I did. A couple of days later, one of the weekend promotions ended, but the old promotional price tag was still hanging on a pretty popular item by the entrance. On any other day, I would have changed it in a minute and forgotten about it. But this time, I left everything as it was. After all, I had just been clearly told that I couldn't touch the price tags without his personal inspection and presence. Customers started picking up this item and heading to the checkout expecting the lower price. I explained that the promotional price tag was still on the shelf and to change it I needed the owner to check and approve everything. But since the price tag was displayed, we were obliged to charge that price for those who had already picked up the item. And this kept happening over and over again. By the time he finally showed up later that same day, we had already sold a decent batch at the expired promotional price. He saw the price tag, got angry, and immediately asked why no one had replaced it. I simply repeated his own rule. No one touches the price tags without your personal inspection and presence. You yourself said to leave everything as it is if you're not here and haven't checked it. He paused for a second, as if trying to find a loophole in his own words, and then said, "Well, obviously that's not what I meant." Yes, it's obvious. That was the whole idea. After that incident, his rule quietly changed to act according to the situation, message me about any major issues, which in fact had been our standard policy before he decided to put on this show. The customer is always right about the delivery address, even when they're wrong. I work as a courier for a local company that delivers furniture and building materials. Overall, the job is pretty chill, but sometimes you run into customers who seem to have rudeness in their blood. Last Thursday, I had a delivery for one of those guys. He ordered a bunch of heavy materials for outdoor decking. The address listed was an old industrial area on the outskirts of town. It's mostly abandoned warehouses and empty lots out there. I called him about 10 minutes before arrival to clarify exactly where to unload the pallet because the GPS was taking me to some fenced-off gravel pit. He picked up the phone and immediately started yelling. He said that I get paid to drive, not to ask stupid questions, and that the address in the system is there for a reason. I tried to explain that the place looked more like a construction site or a dump, but he interrupted me and said that he was a busy man and wasn't going to hold my hand. He literally said, "Leave the cargo exactly where it says in the documents and stop bothering me or I'll call your boss." Well, fine, I'm a simple guy. I went strictly according to the coordinates in the waybill. There was a rusty fence and a gate in front of a completely empty dirt lot with a sign that said private property, no entry, not a soul around, no buildings nearby. I checked the documents again and the address matched exactly. I unloaded the entire pallet of expensive cedar decking right onto the ground by the fence, carefully leaned it against the barrier, and took a photo to confirm delivery. About 3 hours later, my boss called me into his office. It turned out that this idiot client had mistakenly given the old coordinates of his company instead of his home address, which is all the way on the other side of the city. He was furious because when he got there, some of the boards had already been taken by people passing by, and the remaining material was lying in the dirt. He tried to claim that I should have realized it was a mistake, but my boss simply played back the recording of our conversation where the client himself told me to stop asking stupid questions and unload everything exactly at the address listed in the documents. In the end, he had to pay in full for a new order because he himself had confirmed the delivery terms. I later saw him at the warehouse picking up the new goods. He didn't say a word, as if he'd swallowed his tongue. Don't you want me to help you comply with the DOT requirements of the US Department of Transportation? Well, buddy, then get ready for a fine and a driving ban. This incident happened about 6 hours ago, and the whole story wrapped up around 3 hours ago. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a long-haul trucker with a lot of experience. I was parked at a truck stop about 150 miles from the unloading site and about 30 miles from a DOT way station. Another driver was fueling up nearby, and I noticed he was hauling hazardous materials. You could tell by the appropriate placards on his trailer. Looking more closely, I noticed that everything was done haphazardly. One placard was turned sideways, 2 were actually upside down, and a few more were stuck on with tape. I've been in this business for over 10 years, so I immediately realized this was a violation. I decided to warn him so the guy wouldn't get in trouble at the inspection for improper labeling. I calmly approached him and in a friendly way told him that the placards were attached incorrectly and advised him to fix it before heading out. Since we were in my home state, I knew how the DOT works here. He asked how long I had been a truck driver. I replied, about 10 years. He smirked and said that he himself had only been driving for 2 years but knew more about the business than I did. Like, thanks for the advice, but I drive my rig the way I see fit and you drive yours however you want. Well, alright, no problem. I wished him luck and went inside to grab a bite to eat. A couple of hours passed, I set out and headed south. Right before the state border, there's a way station. As I was approaching, I suddenly got a stomachache. I had to pull over to use the restroom. And there in the parking lot was that same driver, tearing off his signs from the trailer, and next to him stood a DOT officer with new signs and a roll of clear tape. I asked what had happened. He looked at me with annoyance and said, they gave me an out-of-service order for improper labeling. I asked how much it cost him. He said $2,500, 15 points on his CSA score. That's the driver and company rating system. And another 15 points on his company score. At that moment, the inspector came over and asked how I knew him. I said that I had tried to help him avoid this situation, but he thought he knew better than me, even though I have 8 more years of experience. The inspector burst out laughing and said to that guy, sometimes it's worth listening to people, especially when they're trying to save you money. The boss said to make the reports shorter. So I shortened them. A bit of context. I work in logistics, and every week I prepare a report detailing what happened with the shipments, any delays, issues with carriers, and so on. Usually my reports took up about a page and a half at most. Everything was relevant, clear, and included all the details. 3 weeks after I started the job, my boss called me in and said literally the following. Your reports are good, but they're too long. Cut out the unnecessary stuff. People don't have time to read all of this. Alright, no unnecessary stuff means no unnecessary stuff. The following week, I submitted a report like this. Week 34, all deliveries completed, 2 delays resolved, 1 carrier replaced, no unresolved issues. And that's it. That was the entire report. Everything written there is true, nothing important was left out. Were there any nuances? Of course. For example, regarding one of the delays, there was a rather tense conversation with the contractor, which to be fair should have been documented. But the boss told me to cut out the unnecessary stuff, and to me, those kinds of details seemed unnecessary. He replied in 4 minutes and asked me to add a bit more information. I added the word successfully before resolved. Week 34. All deliveries have been made, 2 delays have been successfully resolved, 1 carrier has been replaced, and there are no unresolved issues. After that, he came up to me himself and wanted to discuss the report in person. We talked for 20 minutes and I took notes. In the end, those notes turned out to be longer than any of my reports. I've been submitting 1-page reports again, just like before. He never mentioned the length again and never asked for any additional information. He said not to turn off the electricity until he specifically said, turn off the power. So we didn't turn it off. This story is from my childhood. It's over 30 years old. During that time, we lived for several years in an old farmhouse. Mom wanted more light in the kitchen, and her then boyfriend volunteered to hang a new lamp over the sink. He assured us he knew what he was doing. He told us kids we could turn off the power at the fuse box when he was ready, but he gave clear instructions. Don't touch the fuse box until I say, turn off the power. Got it? Flip the breaker only when I give you the specific command. Turn off the power right now. We repeated after him to make sure we understood everything correctly. Flip the breaker at turn off the power. All clear. He got ready and shouted, turn off the light. The fuse box was by the light switch in the living room, and he told me when to touch the breaker. We glanced at each other, shrugged, and just flipped the light switch. The light is off, we replied. A couple of seconds later, there was a bright flash of sparks, then a string of curses, and he stormed in, furious because he got shocked. Mom stepped in and reminded him that he himself told us not to touch the fuse box until he said the phrase, turn off the power, and she asked what exactly he had told us. He had to admit that he said, turn off the light, not turn off the power. He spent several more hours trying to connect that lamp, but in the end, he gave up. Mom called the elder from the church, and he sorted it out in about 10 minutes. Of course, boss, all the logs will be on your desk in printed form. I work at a medium-sized engineering company, and my manager is a very traditional old-school type. If some information isn't on physical paper, it's as if it doesn't exist. He absolutely does not trust our digital tracking systems or cloud logs, even though we use them for literally everything. From synchronizing models in Revit to monitoring server operations. Last week, there was a relatively minor synchronization failure that caused some data to be lost, and at the morning meeting, he just completely lost his temper. He said he was tired of dealing with this invisible data and ordered that from now on all automatic logs and error reports must be printed out every morning and placed on his desk for his own personal and thorough review. The head of the IT department tried to explain that the server generates thousands of log lines every hour, but the manager brushed him off and said he needed a paper trail because paper doesn't lie. I saw the look on the IT guy's face and immediately understood where this was heading. Since I'm responsible for beam coordination and project logs, I decided to follow his order to the letter. I went into the settings of our automatic reports and switched the output from the internal dashboard to the plotter and the industrial laser printer in the main hall. At the same time, I disabled the filters that usually remove heartbeat pings. These are service signals that the server sends every 30 seconds, just to show that it's alive. On Tuesday, I came to work an hour early to reap the rewards. It was wonderful. The laser printer used up an entire 3 whole packs of paper, and the plotter produced about 6 meters of detailed continuous logs, because I had specifically set them to print as one long strip, supposedly for easier reading. I stacked all of it into a huge wobbly pile at least half a meter high, and carefully carried the whole stack into his office. I even had to move his coffee mug and family photo to make room for the Tuesday morning report. He looked at this mountain of paper, then at me, and I just smiled and said that these were the raw logs for the past 24 hours, just as he had requested, and that I would bring the next batch tomorrow by 9 in the morning. He spent the whole day in his office, and through the thin walls you could hear him rustling through the papers. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he came out. He looked like he had aged 5 years and asked if it was possible to at least get a summary. I replied that, according to his own instructions from the meeting, we no longer use summaries because those are invisible data and we are required to maintain a complete paper trail for reporting. He didn't say anything and simply went back to his office. By Thursday morning, the stack on his desk had grown so huge that he had to work at a small round table in the corner because his main desk was completely buried under logs. On Friday morning, he sent out an email officially reinstating the digital dashboard and asked everyone to use common sense regarding what actually needed to be printed. I still have a few extra rolls of that plotter paper stored away, just in case he changes his mind once again. So, do you want me to do my job your way? No problem. I've been organizing an annual event for many years. I know the entire process inside and out. What information needs to be collected from the guests, when to handle visas, how to plan the program down to the minute. But my boss only knows how to pretend that he knows everything. Last year's event didn't go so well, so this time I prepared in advance. I made a shared Excel spreadsheet for the team, neat and well structured. Everything in one place: guests' names, positions, dietary restrictions, flight information. Everything is organized in a table with filters convenient for work. The idea was simple. Guests fill out a Google form, we transfer the data, and everything is ready. At some point, the boss saw this file and just deleted it without warning, without any discussion. It was just gone. Instead, he created a new tab that directly pulled in the raw responses from the Google form. At one of the meetings, I carefully mentioned that the working table had disappeared. That's when he admitted that he deleted it because his version was more automated. Like, just use the responses from the form and add columns as needed. To be honest, in theory it sounded logical, but not for an event like this. In practice, it turned out to be much less convenient. Guests change their information and submit the form multiple times. Some people cancel, others add companions with completely different flights and meal requirements. Everything quickly turns into chaos. I tried to explain this several times, especially since I was the one who had to work with it in the end anyway. But despite this, he insisted that his way was better. Well, fine, I complied. All the information went strictly where the form allowed without any additional structure or processing. Duplicate responses were simply highlighted in red without being merged. In one response, there could be several flights, all 4 crammed into a single cell. Meal restrictions for several people, all lumped together. Just try to figure out later who's vegan and who has a nut allergy. By special request, huge texts were inserted into single cells without changes. I followed his system exactly. Eventually, he realized the table was unusable. Nothing could be properly filtered, and finding the necessary information was impossible. And you definitely can't show this to management and try to pass it off as your own work. Meanwhile, I calmly restored my original table on my personal drive so my actual work wasn't affected. Although, to be honest, it wasn't easy to switch between tabs like a ninja while he was hovering over me and monitoring everything. I'm using asbestos to my advantage. I work in the restoration field at a large insurance contracting company. I've been with this company for 5 years now, and because of the constant staff turnover, I'm the most senior employee in our department. My boss's son, whom I personally trained and who still comes to me for advice, got promoted to supervisor. It didn't really bother me much. I have a normal attitude toward him. Besides, my boss has always said that I'm the best technician in the company and that I have great prospects ahead of me. Over these 5 years, I've overseen projects worth millions of dollars. I spent almost a year on business trips dealing with major emergencies, floods, cyclones, and so on. Among the field staff, I'm considered a leader and the most competent person in our field. I have almost perfect results on the qualification exams. I have awards for my work and have made a huge contribution to the company. I know it sounds conceited, but I really am one of the best specialists. And during my time here, the department has grown threefold. On top of that, I handle most of the overtime and emergency callouts. Every year during certification, I suggested introducing new positions because all the field staff, except for the boss's son, have the same title, technical specialist. There's no hierarchy at all. I said we needed a senior technician or a team lead who would oversee projects, monitor quality, and ensure a unified approach. I also suggested introducing a dedicated estimator, because right now each technician calculates estimates themselves, and that's why everything is a mess. Every year I was told that all this was planned for when the business grows, and that I was first in line for a promotion. Let's fast forward to the middle of 2025. 2 new management positions are created in the office, and office staff are promoted to fill them. Then, without any announcement or selection process, they promote another technician, the next most experienced after me, to a new position, supervisor estimator. And this guy is a complete idiot who constantly breaks standards, teaches newcomers to ignore the rules and do things his way. And when inevitably everything goes wrong and complaints come in from insurance companies or clients, he blames those same newcomers. For example, he wets down structures with chemicals before checking the moisture level, just so he can set up drying equipment and bill for it. Or he makes people install industrial fans in rooms with mold, which spreads the spores throughout the entire building. On top of all that, our division absorbed another one, and 3 new technicians immediately got senior status and a salary 10,000 higher than mine. To put it mildly, I was furious about this. After that, the company officially announced they were bringing on board another restoration supervisor, so to balance out that same estimator, because even they realize he's a completely untrustworthy and shady individual. I applied for the position, was told it had been cancelled, and then they immediately hired someone from outside. I filed a complaint with HR. They set up a meeting with the boss, and basically he just told me to get a haircut because I look too young and immature for a promotion. I'm 32, and that I'm too valuable in my current position. So that's all the context for you. Sorry if it's a lot to read. And now, let's move on to the malicious compliance. Now, since I have to report to someone who ignores established standards, on every project I ask him to give me instructions in writing, because I'm just a technician and cannot possibly know the right way to do things. And then I attach these instructions to my reports. As a result, I've created an entire documented history of how he violates standards and essentially defrauds insurance companies. Moving on. Our company has a strict zero-contact policy regarding asbestos. If any material is discovered on the worksite that could potentially contain asbestos, we are required to immediately cease all work operations, close off the site, put up warning signs, and formally request inspection and removal. Yes, technically in Australia you can remove up to 3 square meters yourself without a license. But company rules are company rules. We handle asbestos much the same way as we do with mold. So I already have all the equipment, personal protective equipment, and special bags. In the past, if I found something small like a piece of cement sheet in the floor or wall, I would just remove it myself. But for almost a year now, at the slightest hint, whether it's a crumb of old cement sheet or old glue, I immediately stop the project, halt work for several weeks, and add extra costs to the company. Even old glossy paint doesn't get overlooked. What if there's lead in it? If I'm removing the floor, I might write to the supervisor or estimator and ask if I need to check the soil under the floor. Then I start digging and looking for anything I can photograph and use as a reason to shut down the site, and then I shift all the responsibility onto him. After all, that's what he said himself. I know that without a written order, he would just turn a blind eye to the problem. And yes, this trick works surprisingly often. You can find something suspicious in almost any house. Yes, I've been working like this for quite a while now. Plus, I have decided to stop taking any extra overtime unless I absolutely require the money. Right now, I'm planning on working for just a couple more years to get my long service leave. And then I'll look for another job. So far, nothing serious has come out of my malicious compliance. If anything changes, I'll post an update. For now, I'm playing the long game. If someone from management leaves on their own or gets fired in disgrace, maybe they'll offer me their position. But honestly, I don't care anymore. If I get fired, so be it. Update. The first consequences emerged. After 6 months, they finally noticed the quality of my work had dropped. The boss is now panicking over one site where, to put it mildly, I did a poor job. The insurance company is unhappy because the work doesn't meet standards, and the boss thinks I cost him $50,000. The floor wasn't covered and the insulation fell apart. After the demolition, there were holes left. That's not like you. Is everything okay with you? You're one of the best. Mistakes like this are only expected from a rookie. I really wanted to launch into a whole tirade about how, in terms of position, I'm no different from a rookie and that I wasn't considered worthy of a promotion, even though I was the best technician. I wanted to say, you said I didn't look mature enough. Well, I started working at the level of my salary, but I held back. I'll save that for the annual review next month. In the end, I just said, yeah, I know I can do better because I really can. I just don't see the point in putting in the effort if it doesn't lead anywhere. Now half the team has been sent back to the site to redo all the work after me. If you don't like the way I eat, then I just won't eat. My folks have weird quirks. They can get pissed off over some little thing and then they'll be angry for hours, insult me, threaten to take things away, kick me out of the house, and so on. Plus, they don't believe in most mental health issues and diagnoses. According to their logic, it's simple. Either I go to a therapist and somehow magically become normal, or it's just a waste of money. They don't even bring up medication or anything like that. One of their main complaints is about the way I eat. During the day, I tend to snack rather than eat large meals. Heavy food, especially fatty, dairy, or acidic foods, makes me feel nauseous, as does eating too quickly. I rarely feel very hungry. Sometimes I just feel a bit weak and then I eat to get back to normal. Because of this, when we go out to eat or I have a meal at home, I often don't finish my food right away, but take the leftovers with me or set some aside for later. Let me say right away, I don't throw anything away. I eat everything just later, usually within the next day. My friends and relatives don't care about this, but my mom and stepdad, especially my stepdad, really do. 2 weeks ago, he yelled at me because I didn't finish my meal and took it with me to work the next day, where I ate it without any problem. He shouted that this isn't how people eat, that even if I finish everything later, I'm wasting his money because the food is already not fresh. He said he can't stand spending money on me and that it would be better if I didn't order anything at all when we go out somewhere, because he won't pay anymore. At the same time, he hurled a bunch of insults and my spineless mom just stayed silent. My younger brother later found me and apologized for them, saying he doesn't understand why they treat me so harshly. Well then, let's play this game. From that evening on, whenever our whole family goes out to eat, I don't order anything at all. If I bring my wallet with me, I make a point of paying for myself and only get something small. At home, I also started serving myself very small portions. No more leftovers at all. At first, my stepfather stayed silent, but now he and my mom have started throwing around words like anorexia and eating disorder. Meanwhile, I'm 163 centimeters tall, weigh about 59 kilograms, and have a body fat percentage of 24. I'm completely healthy, even according to my doctor. Now they're even angrier. They say that I'm making them look like abusers in front of others and acting like an immature bitch. I just reply that I'm doing exactly what they asked me to do. And usually after that, they back off. I have my own car and a job where, fortunately, I'm paid well. I'm not starving at all. I just refuse to take any food they offer, whether at home or anywhere else, purely on principle. Thank you so much for watching. Write in the comments below which story you like the most. And don't forget to check out our other videos. Hugs. See you tomorrow. Bye.